Hey guys, Karl here. Today we're talking about the Canon FD 28mm f2.8 lens. Vintage. I love this lens. It does hold a special place in my heart as I love the 28mm focal length and this lens specifically for the colors that it reproduces. It's a fun lens to use when I travel or if I want to be nostalgic. I picked this guy up for around 40 bucks and it has a ton of character. That is like the buzzword when you're talking about lenses, right? The color reproduction and contrast is really good with this lens. My specific copy isn't the smoothest, but it's optically sound, which is nice. This lens performs very well, and honestly, it's a steal. I have adapted this to my Sony bodies using this Vello Adapter right there. I'll talk more about that later on in this video. But first, I'm gonna go over a few items on this lens in detail. First up, build quality. This lens is pretty much made of plastic, which honestly makes it feel kind of cheap. It is very light in the hand, weighing by itself 143 grams and 240 grams with the adapter. The aperture ring is clicked and you would have to declick this if you wanted to use it with video for aperture pulls, but it is very difficult to do yourself. I have ruined one other lens by trying to declick it, so I had to order another one. So I just leave it clicked. I'm gonna probably have it declicked at some point, but I don't wanna mess up another one because there's only so many of these out there in the world, right? My personal copy has a little bit of a drag on the focus ring, which isn't that big of a deal. I actually, it's not bad. I kind of like it because it gives me a little bit more feedback when I'm using it. I have a 50mm also, and the 50mm that I have is very smooth. One finger can pretty much do it, whereas this one I have to really kind of try to get it going. So there is that also, but in the build quality. This lens has a 52mm filter thread, which makes it real easy to adapt your filters using a step-up ring. Now we're gonna talk about image quality. This lens has a ton of character. There I go, using that buzzword again to describe a lens, but it has a ton of character. The color reproduction is great and it's full of contrast. It definitely has a Canon color to it, a bit warmer if I say, compared to some of the newer lenses out there that kind of give a more neutral color out of camera. Canon did create one of the most optically pure wide-angle lenses that you can find. Distortion is virtually non-existent in this lens. This is in part to the arrangement of the floating elements in this lens, which gives you an image that is highly detailed and resolved perfectly. The 5 aperture blades give you a pretty good looking out of focus area, or bokeh if you will. It's not the most beautiful bokeh I've ever seen, but it does look pretty good at f2.8. Take that for what it's worth. There is detectable softness in the corners at f2.8. I do think this lens produces a very pleasing look for a wide angle lens, and I do like it. I do fancy it. You will get some flaring or ghosting if you shoot directly into sunlight, which is very common with all of the FD lenses that I've used so far. You can create some cool aesthetic with it if you shoot directly into light. Focus quality. For a manual focus lens, it works as suspected. This lens has a minimum focusing distance of 30 centimeters, or 11.8 inches, which is really good if you're trying to get up close to your subject. Honestly, I'm about 11 inches away from it. You can see every pore on my skin. I think I have good skin. The short focus throw makes it very repeatable and easy to nail focus. You will want to use focus peaking on the camera that you're using because I would not trust the actual foot markers if I'm using an adapter. Rather not take a chance in that aspect. All right, now let's talk about the actual adapter itself. The Vello I'm gonna read this real fast because I don't know it off the top of my head. The Vello NEX FD adapter. There you go. The Vello adapter is nice. It's made of metal. It's very solid. It has a lock-unlock ring to be able to use the aperture in the FD lens. I'm not a huge fan of the FD mount as I find it hard to mount in the dark. After reading that back on my teleprompter, it doesn't sound that great. But I find it hard to mount in the dark, or if I'm on the run. To make sure that this is locked or unlocked is what I always have an issue with. Not actually putting it on the adapter itself, but if you put it on like that and then you can't twist the lock-unlock ring, so then you can't use your aperture, which is annoying. So you have to go take it back off again, twist that, and then go, twist it again, and then you're able to use your aperture like that. It's not a huge deal, but sometimes when you're trying to move fast, or like this is in your bag and it rotates on accident and then you put it on there, sometimes you have to do it a couple times and it is a little annoying personally. But when you do get it mounted on there, the results are beautiful because it's a beautiful lens and it works great. So small caveat to deal with. In wrapping this up, it's a very cheap setup. If you find the right prices, you could probably get this entire setup for 60 to 80 bucks, which is honestly a steal. It does depend on the quality of the used lens that you purchase, as not all used vintage lenses are created equal. You gotta watch out for a few things when buying a vintage lens. Fungus, scratches on the actual glass itself, dents and damage. There's a plethora of things you gotta be careful of when you buy a used old vintage lens. But when you find one that's right, they work really well. If you're looking for a full manual lens, look no further than the Canon FD 28mm f2.8 lens. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you got something out of this, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.